Hey everyone, welcome back to Alexa Bliss TV. If you're new here, I'm Alexa Bliss, and this is your go-to channel for breaking down the biggest news stories that actually impact your life. Today we're diving into something massive. Amazon just announced they're cutting 16,000 jobs worldwide, and this isn't just another corporate headline. We're talking about real economic shockwaves hitting Canada and beyond, AI's growing role in reshaping the workforce, and what experts like former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney are warning us about. This could affect your job, your city, and the entire economy, so stick around because we're breaking down all 7 critical angles of this story. Before we jump in, do me a solid, hit that subscribe button, and drop a comment below telling me if you or someone you know works in tech or retail. I read every single comment, and your insights make these conversations so much richer. All right, let's get into it. Amazon has just dropped a bombshell. 16,000 jobs are being cut worldwide. And here's the kicker. The news actually leaked through an email sent out by mistake that went public today. Talk about finding out you're losing your job through a corporate oops moment, right? According to Amazon, they're giving U.S. employees 90 days to find other positions within the company, which sounds generous until you realize that's 90 days of uncertainty and stress. Reuters reported that these layoffs are hitting multiple departments: Amazon Web Services, AWS, retail operations, Prime Video, and even HR departments. Nobody's safe. What makes this even more alarming is that this comes just months after Amazon slashed 14,000 white-collar jobs back in late October. Company executives have been stressing the need to eliminate excessive bureaucracy and reduce the number of managers. But let's be real. Announcing broad reductions every few months doesn't exactly scream stability. One senior leader even acknowledged this pattern, which has employees understandably on edge. From warehouses scattered around Metro Vancouver to the massive 1.1 million square feet of office space in downtown buildings, Amazon is a huge employer locally. But right now, it's completely unclear what these latest layoffs mean for specific regions. The uncertainty is perhaps the most unsettling part. Workers don't know if they're next, and communities don't know how hard they'll be hit. This isn't just a corporate restructuring story that we can brush aside. This is a clear signal with real implications for labor markets, consumer confidence, and economic stability across multiple countries, with Canada particularly exposed to the fallout. Canada is facing what economists are calling a dual economic shock, and Amazon's announcement is intensifying an already fragile situation. Former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney isn't mincing words. He's warning that this poses serious risks to Canada's economy, and he's urging people to understand that this isn't speculation. These are clear signals of where the country might be heading. Let's put this in perspective. In downtown Vancouver alone, Amazon employs approximately 4,500 corporate employees, high-tech workers focusing on AI development, customer experience, and web development. These aren't just any jobs. These are high-paying positions that drive local economies. City Councilor Peter Meisner is watching the situation closely, though he's trying to stay optimistic. Amazon has actually been expanding their presence in Vancouver, preparing to move into the North Tower of their complex, so there's hope that local impact might be limited. However, the bigger picture is more concerning. Canada is entering a period of what experts call heightened economic sensitivity. As one of the world's largest employers with substantial presence across Canadian provinces, Amazon's workforce decisions create ripples that go far beyond their own operations. When a company this massive makes moves, it affects supplier companies, local businesses that depend on employee spending, real estate markets, and even municipal tax revenues. What makes Canada particularly vulnerable right now is timing. The country has been grappling with persistent inflation pressures, forcing the Bank of Canada to raise interest rates aggressively over the past 2 years. While inflation has moderated somewhat, those higher borrowing costs have weighed heavily on housing markets, consumer spending, and business investment. Economic growth has already slowed, and productivity growth remains disappointingly weak compared to other advanced economies. Against this backdrop, large-scale layoffs by a global employer like Amazon contribute to a growing perception that the economy is losing momentum, even if headline employment figures still look relatively stable for now. This perception matters because it influences how businesses plan, how consumers spend, and how investors allocate their money. Economic confidence can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. When people expect things to get worse, they often do. Now, here's where things get really interesting and somewhat controversial. Amazon has framed these layoffs as part of an ongoing effort to rebalance after their rapid expansion during the pandemic years. Many tech companies, both in Canada and the U.S., went on massive hiring sprees with the anticipation that pandemic-era usage of their tools and services would continue growing indefinitely. They assumed remote work, online shopping surges, and cloud computing demand would keep accelerating. But when COVID ended and things normalized, many of these companies found themselves with essentially redundant employees, people hired for growth that never materialized. Amazon increased hiring aggressively when online shopping exploded, cloud computing demand skyrocketed, and home delivery became the default for millions of households. As conditions normalized and interest rates rose, the company shifted its focus toward cost control and operational efficiency. However, there's intense debate about whether these cuts are really just pandemic correction or if artificial intelligence is the real driver here. Some experts are quite skeptical that AI is the primary factor. They argue this is more about Amazon resizing its workforce after overexpanding, returning to more sustainable staffing levels that match current demand rather than pandemic peaks. But here's what makes people nervous. Amazon CEO Andy Jassy said pretty bluntly last year that as the company rolls out more AI agents, there will be a need for fewer people doing some of the jobs being done today. He also acknowledged there would be more people needed for other types of jobs, but that transition isn't exactly smooth or guaranteed for displaced workers. Amazon, like many other tech giants, is pouring tens of billions of dollars into building AI infrastructure specifically to corner the AI market. Beth Galenti, Amazon's senior vice president of people, tried to reassure employees on Wednesday, saying that job cuts would not become the new rhythm of the company. But if you're one of the 16,000 people receiving termination notices, or if you're watching colleagues disappear every few months, those words probably feel hollow. The pattern speaks louder than the promises. The broader conversation about AI and employment is just beginning, and Amazon's situation is becoming a test case that other companies are watching closely. If Amazon can maintain or even improve productivity with significantly fewer employees thanks to AI tools, other companies will absolutely take notice and consider similar moves. Even if you don't work for Amazon and don't know anyone who does, these layoffs still matter to you. Here's why. When major employers downsize, it creates a ripple effect that touches nearly everyone in the economy. Employers across industries tend to grow more cautious when they see giants like Amazon cutting jobs. They freeze hiring, delay expansion plans, and become more conservative in their business decisions. At the same time, workers, even those whose jobs are secure, become more hesitant to change jobs or make large financial commitments. Think about it. If you're seeing headlines about thousands of job losses, are you going to feel confident buying a new house, financing a car, or making other major purchases? Probably not. This collective caution slows economic activity, creating a feedback loop that reinforces existing economic headwinds created by high interest rates and weakening consumer demand. The job market data is already showing concerning trends. Last year was the weakest year for job creation in the U.S. outside of a recession since 2003. Things have really slowed down on the jobs front, and Amazon's job cuts paint an even clearer picture of that reality. Yet here's the contradiction. The stock market hit record highs, and it was actually a really good year for stock market investors. This creates a strange split economy where people with stock market investments and home equity wealth are doing great, while workers face increasing insecurity. The regional impact deserves special attention too. In communities where Amazon fulfillment centers represent major sources of employment, workforce reductions can devastate local economies. Reduced household income means local businesses, from retail stores to restaurants to service providers, all see decreased revenue. Municipal governments may face lower tax revenues at exactly the same time that demand for social services increases as more people need unemployment assistance and other support programs. While Canada's social safety net helps cushion these impacts, it doesn't eliminate them. Economic shocks, even moderate ones, can compound existing stresses in regions already struggling with housing affordability issues, housing shortages, or limited employment diversity. Once an area gets a reputation for job losses and economic trouble, it becomes harder to attract new investment and employers, creating a downward spiral that's difficult to reverse. Financial markets interpret these layoffs as important signals too. Large corporations often act early when they anticipate slower demand or tighter financial conditions ahead. Workforce reductions can reinforce investor expectations of economic slowdown, which influences investment decisions and market sentiment throughout the economy, including in Canada. This is where Mark Carney's perspective becomes especially important and somewhat sobering. As the former governor of both the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, Carney has a unique vantage point on economic policy and global trends. While he's no longer responsible for setting monetary policy, his analysis continues to carry significant weight and influence public debate. Carney has repeatedly cautioned that Canada's economic challenges run much deeper than short-term business cycles or temporary setbacks. He's argued that the country's over-reliance on housing as an economic driver, combined with rising household debt levels and persistently lagging productivity, leaves Canada dangerously vulnerable to external shocks. These aren't problems that can be fixed with quick policy tweaks. They require fundamental restructuring of how the economy functions. In Carney's view, events like large multinational layoffs should be understood as part of a massive global economic realignment rather than isolated corporate decisions that happen randomly. He's emphasized that technological change, climate transition pressures, and geopolitical fragmentation are all reshaping global labor markets at an accelerating pace. Companies are reorganizing supply chains, automating processes, and reallocating investment based on global conditions and profit maximization, not based on national employment priorities or protecting local workers. For Canada, this reality poses a fundamental challenge. The country benefits enormously from global economic integration. Trade, investment, and international business connections drive prosperity. But that same integration creates exposure and vulnerability when multinational firms adjust their strategies based on global rather than local considerations. When headquarters decisions in Seattle or Silicon Valley can eliminate thousands of Canadian jobs with a single announcement, it underscores just how limited national governments are in influencing these decisions. Carney has been particularly vocal about Canada's persistent productivity problem. The country simply isn't generating enough economic value per worker compared to other advanced economies, which makes Canadian operations more vulnerable when companies look for places to cut costs. Without productivity improvements, Canada risks becoming a place where companies reduce presence rather than expand, regardless of other advantages the country offers. The persistence of weak productivity suggests that Canada hasn't solved fundamental challenges around innovation, technology adoption, business practices, and workforce skills. These aren't problems that appear overnight, and they won't be solved quickly either. But ignoring them becomes more dangerous as global competition intensifies and technological change accelerates. There's often a stark contrast between corporate messaging and worker reality, and Amazon's handling of these layoffs illustrates that gap perfectly. Amazon leadership released a statement saying, "We've been working to strengthen our organization by reducing layers, increasing ownership, and removing bureaucracy." They explained that while many teams finalized organizational changes back in October, other teams didn't complete that work until now. On paper, this sounds reasonable and well-planned. Amazon positioned this as strategic delayering, targeting middle management positions to create flatter organizational structures with fewer people managing work and more people actually doing the direct work. CEO Andy Jassy has been talking about this vision since last year, emphasizing the importance of being lean, flat, and able to move fast. The company also noted that various departments were given choices during the October layoffs: cut people immediately or wait until after the holiday season. Many departments, particularly in retail, chose to wait until after Christmas to do their cuts. The result is that we're now seeing a total of 30,000 job cuts in just 3 months, the largest corporate layoff wave in Amazon's history, surpassing even the 27,000 cuts they made back in 2021 and 2022. But here's what that looks like from a worker's perspective. Employees posted on platforms like TikTok about receiving termination emails at 3 a.m., checking their phones anxiously each morning, wondering if today is the day, and dealing with weeks of uncertainty and anxiety. One employee shared their experience of receiving more than 453 paychecks from Amazon before being added to the 16,000 people laid off just this month. Some affected workers are finding their Amazon Fresh and Amazon Go stores suddenly closed with no warning. People showed up for their shifts only to find signs saying the store was closed for the rest of the day, with no clarity about whether it was temporary or permanent. One regular customer expressed disappointment. "I come here often to return stuff and do grocery shopping here. This would have been my first time coming to this Amazon Fresh, and to see this. Very, very disappointing. I'm sad." The company is providing 90 days for impacted employees to look for another role within Amazon, and those who don't successfully transition will receive severance, benefits, and career support. While these provisions help, they don't eliminate the fundamental disruption and stress of sudden unemployment, especially in a market where thousands of workers are competing for limited positions. So where do we go from here? The significance of Amazon's decision lies not just in the immediate job losses, but in what it reveals about the global economic environment and Canada's position within it. The country remains deeply integrated into international markets and fundamentally dependent on decisions made far beyond its borders. The question now is whether this moment becomes a catalyst for meaningful reform or simply another headline that fades before prompting real change. Looking ahead, the focus absolutely must shift from reaction to preparation. Economic disruptions driven by global corporations are no longer rare, isolated events that we can treat as exceptions. These are recurring features of an interconnected, rapidly changing economy. For Canada, this means moving beyond short-term crisis responses and actually strengthening long-term economic fundamentals. Investment in productivity-enhancing technologies, modern infrastructure, and workforce skills aligned with future demand is essential. Without these measures, Canada risks remaining perpetually vulnerable to decisions made elsewhere, with limited ability to protect domestic employment when global firms adjust course based on their worldwide strategies. There's also a clear and urgent need for better coordination between government, industry, and educational institutions. Labor market transitions are happening faster than traditional systems were designed to handle. Workers displaced by restructuring, automation, or strategic pivots require timely access to retraining that leads to real opportunities, not temporary fixes or outdated programs that don't match actual employer needs. This requires accurate forecasting of labor demand, honest assessment of which skills will remain valuable, and a genuine willingness to adapt policies as conditions change. Countries that manage these transitions effectively are better positioned to maintain both social stability and economic competitiveness. Those that don't risk falling behind in ways that become increasingly difficult to reverse. For businesses operating in Canada, this moment reinforces the critical importance of transparency and responsibility. While companies must remain competitive in global markets, the way workforce decisions are communicated and implemented genuinely matters. Sudden layoffs undermine trust and confidence not only within a company but across the broader economy. Clear communication, substantive support for affected workers, and genuine collaboration with local communities can significantly mitigate the damage. Ultimately, Canada's ability to navigate future economic shocks will depend on choices made right now, choices that determine whether the country merely reacts to global forces or actively shapes a more secure and sustainable economic future for its citizens. The warning signs are visible and clear. The real question is whether they'll be taken seriously enough to prompt meaningful action before the next major shock arrives. And there you have it. The full picture of what Amazon's 16,000 job cuts really mean, not just for the people directly affected, but for all of us watching the economy shift beneath our feet. This story is about so much more than one company's restructuring. It's about AI replacing human workers, Canada's economic vulnerabilities being exposed, the gap between corporate profits and worker security, and whether we're prepared for the rapid changes coming our way. Here's what I want to know from you. Do you think AI-driven layoffs are inevitable, or can we find a better balance? Are you worried about your own job security in this new economy? And what do you think Canada should do differently to protect workers while staying competitive? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to hear your perspective on this because these conversations matter. If you found this breakdown valuable, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss when I break down the next big story. Share this video with anyone who needs to understand what's really happening beyond the headlines. I'm Alexa Bliss. This is Alexa Bliss TV, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay informed, stay prepared, and take care of yourselves out there.